of the flexor digitorum superficialis, which run underneath the flexor retinaculum, and they insert onto the middle phalanx of the index, middle, ring and little fingers. So this tendon is quite interesting because it actually splits and inserts it onto the lateral margins of the middle phalanx, and it allows this other tendon to pass through, so the tendon of the flexor digitorum profundus to pass through. So the tendons of the flexor digitorum superficialis insert onto the middle phalanx, so they split to allow the passage of this flexor digitorum profundus. So an easy way of remembering this is that superficialis splits, profundus passes through, so S superficialis splits, so beginning of the word begins with S, so superficialis splits, profundus passes through. So it inserts on the lateral margins of the middle phalanx. So just to orientate you a bit, you've got the metacarpal bones here, you've got your proximal phalanx, middle phalanx and distal phalanx. So you've got your proximal interphalangeal joint and your distal interphalangeal joint. So the action of the flexor digitorum superficialis is to flex at the proximal interphalangeal joint of the index, middle, ring and little fingers. And it can also flex at this joint, so the metacarpophalangeal joints. So it can flex at the MCP joints and the PIP joints of the first of the index to little fingers. So I'm just going to phalanges. So I'll just bring back those other tendons. So you can see how they split. You can see the tendon of the flexor digitorum superficialis splitting and the tendon of the flexor digitorum profundus passing through to insert onto the distal phalanx. So you can probably guess that this muscle, when it contracts, it flexes the distal interphalangeal joint. So the flexor digitorum superficialis flexes the proximal interphalangeal joint, and the flexor digitorum profundus flexes the distal interphalangeal joint, and it can also flex the metacarpophalangeal joints, so the MCP joints. Just bring the flex back up here. So the next muscle is the flexor pollicis longus. So it's this muscle here, which is actually shown a little out of place on this model because it inserts more medially and anteriorly on the radius bone, so more in this sort of region. So this is the flexor pollicis longus. So pollicis refers to the thumb, so we'll go through a lot of other muscles which act on the thumb, and they all have the word pollicis. So pollicis is Latin referring to thumb. So what this muscle does is it flexes the thumb at the interphalangeal joint. So it runs down, it's shown a bit out of place here, it actually runs underneath the flexor retinaculum in the carpal tunnel. So it runs through the carpal tunnel and it inserts on the distal phalanx. So when it contracts, it flexes the thumb at this interphalangeal joint, and it can also flex at the metacarpophalangeal joint. So the final muscle of the deep layer is the pronator quadratus, which lies underneath the tendons of the flexor pollicis longus and the tendons of the flexor digitorum profundus. So from its rectangular shape, so quadratus referring to its four sides. So I've just removed the flexor pollicis longus and the flexor digitorum profundus, and you've got this pronator quadratus. So as the name suggests, it's a pronator muscle. So the next muscle is the flexor and pollicis longus. It's this muscle here, shown a bit funny here. is actually shown a little joint. I'll just isolate it. So it's actually this. So it runs down rectangular shape. Again, it's shown it runs underneath. So it flexes the thumb at this interphalanx. So it originates on this distal anterior surface of the ulna and inserts distally on the anterior surface of the radius, and it contracts. When it contracts, it pronates the forearm. So those are the muscles of the anterior compartment, the flexor compartment of the forearm. You've got the superficial, intermediate and deep layers, and you've got muscles which flex the wrist, which flex the fingers, and which pronate the forearm. This is a tutorial on the muscles of the posterior compartment of the forearm. So these muscles are extensors, so it's also called the extensor compartment. So hopefully you've watched the tutorial I did on the muscles of the anterior compartment. So the muscles of the flexor compartment have a common origin on the medial epicondyle of the humerus, and the muscles of the extensor compartment have a common origin on the lateral epicondyle of the humerus. So these muscles produce extension at the wrist joint, extension of the fingers and thumb, and supination of the forearm. And all the muscles in the forearm, the radial nerve. So in the posterior compartment, you can separate the muscles into a superficial layer and a deep layer. So first I'm going to talk about the muscles of the superficial layer. And there are 7 muscles in the superficial. Of the posterior compartment is this muscle here, the brachioradialis muscle. And this muscle, as the name suggests, originates on the arm. So brachium is Latin for arm, so it originates on the humerus, and it inserts onto the lateral surface on the distal radius, so brachioradialis. So it originates on the supracondylar ridge, the lateral supracondylar ridge of the humerus, and it runs down the forearm and inserts laterally on the distal forearm, on the distal radius, sorry. So that's the brachioradialis, and what this muscle does is that it can act as an accessory flexor of the elbow. So just working medially, the muscle just next to the brachioradialis here, which inserts slightly lower down on the supracondylar ridge, the lateral supracondylar ridge. This is the extensor carpi radialis longus. So this muscle originates on a little bit below the brachioradialis on the lateral supracondylar ridge, and it inserts down here on the base of the second metacarpal. So this is the dorsal surface on the base of the second metacarpal. So what this muscle does is it extends the wrist, and it also can abduct the wrist. So when it contracts, it pulls the wrist back this way, and it can also pull the wrist up like this, abducting it. So medial to this muscle, you've got the extensor carpi radialis brevis. So we've got the longus here and the brevis here. So brevis in Latin means short, so you get the English derivative word brevity, meaning referring to shortness. So brevis means short in Latin, so it refers to the shortness of the tendon of this muscle. So this muscle originates on the lateral epicondyle, and it inserts on the base of the second and third metacarpals. So this muscle has the same action as the extensor carpi radialis longus, in that it extends and abducts the wrist. So medial to this muscle, we've got the extensor digitorum, which originates on the lateral epicondyle, just medial to the extensor carpi radialis brevis, and you can see this muscle here. So this is the outline of the muscle, and if we follow it down the forearm, you can see it gives off 4 tendons. So you've got these 4 tendons coming off the extensor digitorum, and they run on the dorsum of the hand and insert onto the base of the middle and distal phalanx of these 4 digits, so the index, middle, ring and little fingers. So I've just switched over to a diagram to show you this muscle. So you've got this the extensor digitorum tendons here, and you can see at the dorsum of the hand, so over the metacarpals, they actually interconnect, but over the phalanges you can see how the tendon splits around itself. So one part of the tendon inserts at the base of the middle phalanx, and then it splits around to insert at the base of the distal phalanx. So just to show you that a bit more clear. So that's the extensor digitorum. So remembering digitorum refers to the fingers, so it's extensor of the fingers. So this muscle extends the index, middle, ring and little fingers, and it can also extend the wrist. So just going back up to look at the next muscle. So just quickly recap. So you've gone through the brachioradialis, the extensor carpi radialis longus, the extensor carpi radialis brevis, the extensor digitorum muscle, and next we've got this muscle here, the extensor digiti minimi. So this muscle lies medial to the extensor digitorum, and as the name suggests, it's the extensor of the smallest finger. So minimi is Latin for smallest, digiti obviously finger, so it extends the little finger. So again, this muscle originates on the lateral epicondyle, and it inserts on the dorsal hood of the little finger, so it extends the little finger as the name suggests. Just next to this one, medial again, we've got the extensor carpi ulnaris. So this is the antagonist of the flexor carpi ulnaris, which you can see just here with its ulnar and humeral heads in the flexor compartment. So this is the extensor carpi ulnaris, and what this does is it extends and adducts the wrist. So it originates here on the lateral epicondyle, and it inserts on the medial surface of the base of the 5th metacarpal. So you can see that there. So you shouldn't get really too confused about whether it adducts or abducts, because if you know where it inserts, you can imagine the muscle contracting and try to visualize its action. So you've got these 2 muscles, you've got the extensor carpi ulnaris and you've got the extensor carpi radialis, and you've got the longus and brevis. Because they insert on the radial side, they're going to abduct the wrist because they insert on the radial side, so away from the midline, and they're going to pull it up this way, abducting the wrist. The extensor carpi ulnaris inserts on the ulnar side, so it's going to adduct the wrist. So the final muscle of the superficial layer of the posterior compartment is this little muscle here, the anconeus muscle. So this muscle originates on the lateral epicondyle of the humerus again, and it inserts posteriorly on the ulna and on the olecranon. So there are 7 muscles to remember here. So again, you've got the brachioradialis, you've got the extensor carpi radialis longus, the extensor carpi radialis brevis, you've got the extensor digitorum muscle, the extensor digiti minimi, the extensor carpi ulnaris, and the anconeus muscle. And these muscles form the superficial layer. Okay, so if I remove all these 7 superficial muscles of the posterior compartment, we can take a look at the muscles of the deep layer of the posterior compartment. So there are 5 muscles in the deep layer of the posterior compartment of the forearm, and these muscles, apart from the supinator, which has one head that attaches to the lateral epicondyle, these muscles all originate on the posterior surfaces distally on the ulnar and radius and the interosseous membrane. So all these muscles, all 5 of these muscles, are innervated by the posterior interosseous nerve. So this nerve is a continuation of the deep branch of the radial nerve. So first we've got this muscle up here, the supinator muscle. So as this name suggests, this muscle supinates the forearm, and it has 2 heads. It's got a superficial and a deep head. So it's got one head which attaches to the lateral epicondyle of the humerus, which is the superficial head, and it's got this other head, the deep head, which attaches to the posterior aspect of the ulnar bone. So this muscle wraps around the lateral so just below the head and the neck of the radius, and it inserts laterally on the radius. So this muscle supinates the forearm. And there are 2 supinators of the forearm. You've got the biceps as well. So remember, the bicep flexes the elbow and it also supinates the forearm. So 2 supinators you've got. So that's the most proximal muscle. Now just working our way a little bit more distally, we've got this muscle here, the abductor pollicis longus. So this muscle originates distal to the supinator, and it originates on the posterior surfaces of the ulnar and the radius, and also it attaches to the interosseous membrane in between. So it winds down the forearm and it inserts here on the base of the first metacarpal. So what this muscle does when it contracts is that it abducts the carpometacarpal joint, so this joint between the carpal bones and the metacarpals. So this thumb joint, it abducts the thumb. So the word pollicis refers to thumb. So in Latin, pollicis means thumb. So it's the abductor of the thumb. So just distal to the abductor pollicis longus, you've got this muscle here, extensor pollicis. So this muscle originates on the posterior surface of the radius bone, and it inserts on the dorsal surface of the base of the proximal phalanx. So you've got the proximal and distal phalanx in the thumb, and it inserts at the base of the proximal phalanx here. So when this muscle contracts, it extends the metacarpophalangeal joint. So this joint here between the metacarpal and the phalanx, so it extends this joint, and it can also extend the carpometacarpal joint of the thumb. So that's the extensor pollicis brevis. So the next muscle is the extensor pollicis longus. So it's this muscle here, and this muscle originates a bit higher up on the posterior surface of the ulnar bone. So the brevis muscle, the brevis counterpart, originated on the posterior surface of the radius. The extensor pollicis longus originates on the posterior surface of the ulnar bone, and this muscle has a longer tendon, so it's called longus. So brevis means short in Latin, longus means long, obviously, and this muscle has a longer tendon, so it inserts on the distal phalanx, the base of the distal phalanx of the thumb, of the so here on the dorsal surface again. So when this muscle contracts, you can see that it will extend the interphalangeal joint of the thumb, and again it can also extend the carpometacarpal and the metacarpophalangeal joints, so this joint here and this joint here, but its prime purpose is to extend the interphalangeal joint of the thumb. So that's the extensor pollicis longus, because it's got a longer tendon which inserts more distally. So finally we've got this muscle here which originates more distal to the extensor pollicis longus, and it's called the extensor indicis. So indicis refers to the index finger, so it's the extensor of the index finger. So this muscle originates on the posterior surface of the ulna, distal to the extensor pollicis longus, and then it inserts into the extensor hood of the index finger. So, do you remember that muscle I showed you in the superficial layer, the extensor digitorum, which extends all 4 fingers? Well, this muscle joins the insertion point of the extensor digitorum to extend the index finger. So there you have the 5 muscles of the deep layer of the posterior compartment of the forearm. So you've got the supinator up here, which supinates the forearm, and then you've got the muscles of the thumb and the index finger. So you've got the abductor pollicis longus, the extensor pollicis brevis, extensor pollicis longus, and the extensor indicis. So there's quite a lot of muscles in the extensor compartment, but they're all logically named. So have a look through this tutorial again, and hopefully that will help with things. Okay, so this is a tutorial on the intrinsic muscles of the hand. So the intrinsic muscles of the hand are those muscles that are responsible for precision grip. So the muscles that originate in the forearm and insert into the hand are responsible for power grip, and the muscles that originate in the hand and are responsible for precision grip are the intrinsic muscles. So this is a tutorial on those muscles. So I'll just get rid of this palmar aponeurosis and we'll take a look at the muscles. On the side of the little finger, hypothenar muscles. So we're looking at a palmar view, so this is the anterior view of the hand. So the thenar eminence is this eminence here on the thumb side. You can see this bulge on the hand where the thumb muscles. So this is the thenar eminence, and you've got the hypothenar eminence on the little finger side. So between the hypothenar and thenar muscles, you've got this fibrous band of connective tissue which arches over the carpal bones, and this is called the flexor retinaculum, and this blends with the muscles of the thenar and hypothenar muscles. So beneath the flexor retinaculum you've got flexor tendons and the median nerve which pass through. So this is the carpal tunnel. So the carpal tunnel is the space between the carpal bones and the flexor retinaculum, and you've got these flexor tendons and the median nerve which pass through. So the muscles in the intrinsic muscles in the hand, you've got the hypothenar muscles, the thenar muscles, lumbricals, interosseous muscles, the palmaris brevis, and the adductor pollicis. So I'll just talk you through those in this tutorial. So we're just looking at a diagram of the left hand anterior view. So the reason I'm showing you this is because there's this little muscle here, the palmaris brevis, which isn't shown on the 3D model. And this muscle originates on the flexor retinaculum, so this thing here, which interconnects the hypothenar and thenar muscles, and it inserts medially on the dermis of the skin. So that's the palmaris brevis, and it overlies the hypothenar muscles, which I'll come on to talk about. So next we've got the lumbrical muscles. So these muscles flex the metacarpophalangeal joints. And you've got 4 lumbrical muscles, and they originate on the tendons of the flexor digitorum profundus. So you can see these tendons here. These muscles originate on the flexor on the sides of these tendons, and they insert onto the extensor hoods of the 4 fingers, so the index, middle, ring and little fingers. And they flex the metacarpophalangeal joints while extending the interphalangeal joints. So I'll just flick over to a diagram. So this diagram just makes it a bit more clear. You can see the tendons of the flexor digitorum profundus, and you can see the lumbricals attaching to them and inserting onto the extensor hoods of the 4 fingers. So the extensor hoods are these things on the fingers which extend from the tendons of the extensor tendons, and they wrap around the phalanges in a triangular shape, and you've got the intrinsic muscles and various other muscles which insert onto these extensor hoods. So we're just looking at a diagram of an extensor hood here, so it just shows things more clearly. So we're looking at a dorsal surface of a metacarpal and the phalanges. So as the extensor tendon, the extensor digitorum, passes over the dorsal surface of these fingers, the tendon flattens out and wraps around these fingers. So you've got, this is what the extensor hood is. So it's this triangular shape, and it extends up to the distal phalanx, and it covers the middle phalanx, and it wraps around the sides of the metacarpophalangeal joint, and you get these intrinsic muscles which insert onto the extensor hood. So that's just something to be aware of. It's like a flat tendon, so an aponeurosis, triangular shape, which serves as a point of attachment for several muscles. So it's important to be aware of that. So just coming back to this diagram, looking at the muscles of the thenar eminence, so these muscles which are responsible for movements of the thumb. And you've got three muscles in this group. You've got the opponens pollicis, which is the most deep muscles, and you've got two muscles which lie above this, the abductor pollicis brevis and the flexor pollicis brevis. So again, the names of the muscles give away some idea of the function. So the word pollicis is Latin referring to thumb. It actually means of the thumb. So opponens pollicis is the muscle which opposes the thumb. Abductor pollicis brevis, so it abducts the thumb, and the brevis means short in Latin. So there's two muscles which abduct the thumb, one of which originates in the forearm, so the abductor pollicis longus. This is the abductor pollicis brevis, and it's an intrinsic muscle which lies in the hand. And then you've got the flexor pollicis brevis, which flexes the thumb. So these two muscles, the abductor pollicis brevis and flexor pollicis brevis, are superficial. They lie above the opponens pollicis. So these muscles originate on the flexor retinaculum and also on the carpal bones, and they insert onto the thumb. So you can see that the flexor pollicis brevis is distal and the abductor pollicis brevis is more proximal, and you've got the opponens pollicis lying deep to these muscles. So these muscles, together with the lateral two lumbricals, so the first two lumbricals on the index and middle fingers, are innervated by the median nerve. So a way of remembering this is the mnemonic meatloaf. So meat refers to median, to help you remember, and then loaf, so stands for lateral lumbricals, so these two lumbricals here. And then you've got the opponens pollicis, the abductor pollicis brevis, and the flexor pollicis brevis. So loaf, lumbricals, lateral two lumbricals, L, opponens pollicis, O, abductor pollicis brevis, A, and F, flexor pollicis brevis. So meatloaf, median nerve innervates these muscles here. So now that you know the thenar muscles, it's quite easy to learn the hypothenar muscles. So you just replace the word pollicis with digiti minimi, which in Latin means the littlest finger, the smallest finger. So you've got the opponens digiti minimi, which lies deep, just like on the other side, and you've got the abductor and flexor. So you've got abductor digiti minimi and the flexor digiti minimi brevis. And again, the abductor lies proximally and the flexor lies distally. And these two muscles lie above the opponens digiti minimi, which lies deep. So the abductor digiti minimi originates on the pisiform bone. So this is that little bone that sits on the triquetral bone. And it also originates on the pisohamate ligament. So there's a little ligament which attaches from the pisiform bone to the hook of the hamate, which I showed you on the carpal bone tutorial. And it inserts onto the proximal phalanx of the little finger. So what this muscle does, as the name suggests, is that it abducts the little finger at the MCP joint. So the flexor digiti minimi brevis, this muscle originates on the hook of the hamate and also on the flexor retinaculum, and it inserts onto the proximal phalanx. So this muscle flexes at the MCP joint. So just like the other side, you've got the abductor and the flexor lying side by side above the opponens muscle. So we'll just take a look at the opponens muscle. So here we're just looking at the 3D model, left hand again. So you've got these hypothenar muscles here. You've got the abductor digiti minimi and the flexor digiti minimi brevis. So this actually originates on the pisiform bone, so it's a little bit out of place. So that's the abductor, and you've got the flexor digiti minimi brevis. So this muscle originates on the hook of the hamate. So this hamate bone here is called hamate because the Latin hamus refers to hook, means hook. So this little hook process here. And you've got the piezohamate ligament, so that's that ligament which connects the pisiform bone and the hook of the hamate. So the flexor digiti minimi brevis originates on the hook of the hamate and inserts onto the proximal phalanx of the little finger. So just underneath it you've got this muscle here. This is the opponens digiti minimi. So this also originates on the hook of the hamate and the flexor retinaculum, and then it inserts onto the medial aspect. So you can see it inserting medially on this fifth metacarpal. So what this muscle does is that it laterally rotates the fifth metacarpal, so the little finger. So those are the three muscles of the hypothenar group. So I mentioned before the mnemonic meatloaf, which helps you remember that the median nerve innervates the lateral two lumbricals and the muscles of the thenar eminence. So the rest of the muscles, intrinsic muscles of the hand, are actually innervated by the ulnar nerve. So the hypothenar muscles are innervated by the deep branch of the ulnar nerve. So we've talked about the palmaris brevis muscle, the muscles of the hypothenar and thenar eminence. We've talked about the lumbricals. So next we've got this little muscle here, the adductor pollicis. And this muscle, as the name suggests, adducts the thumb. So adductor and pollicis meaning referring to the thumb. So it's the adductor of the thumb. And it inserts onto the base of the proximal phalanx and also the extensor hood of the thumb. And it's got two heads. It's got a transverse head and an oblique head. So the oblique head has its fibres angled obliquely, and the transverse head has horizontal fibres, which gives rise to the names. So this diagram here just shows it a bit more clearly. So we're looking at a view of the left hand still, and you've got the thumb here, and the wrist is kind of flexed. So we've removed the superficial muscles here. We've got rid of the flexor and abductor pollicis, and we're looking at the adductor muscle. So you can see the transverse head and the oblique head with its oblique fibres. So this muscle originates, well, it has different origins depending on the head. So the adductor pollicis, the oblique head, originates on the basis of metacarpals 2 and 3 and also the capitate bone. And you've got the transverse head here, and this originates, as you can see, on the third metacarpal. So this muscle inserts at the base of the proximal phalanx of the thumb, and it adducts the thumb. Okay, so just coming on to the last group of muscles, the interossei muscles, and you've got dorsal and palmar interossei. So we're looking at the back of the left hand here, so we're looking at the dorsal surface. So you can see these muscles in between the metacarpal bones. These are the dorsal interossei muscles. So they originate on the sides of these metacarpal bones, the adjacent sides, and they insert onto the extensor hood. If you remember that diagram that I showed you earlier. So these muscles insert onto the extensor hood. So the dorsal interossei abduct at the index, middle and ring fingers at the metacarpal joints. So the palmar interossei you can see from the palmar surface, and they again originate on the side of the metacarpals and again insert into the extensor hoods. But these muscles adduct, so the palmar interossei adduct. So a way of remembering the functions of the dorsal and the palmar interossei is the mnemonic pad and dab. So palmar adduct, dorsal abduct, abduct. So pad and dab. So those are the intrinsic muscles of the hand. So you've got the thenar group, the hypothenar group, you've got the lumbricals, the dorsal and palmar interossei muscles, and then you've got these little muscles, the palmaris brevis and the adductor pollicis. So those are the muscles of the hand.
Hi, this is Peter from Anatomy Zone, and in this tutorial we're going to take a look at the arterial supply to the upper limb. I'll break this tutorial into two parts. In this part we'll take a look at the supply to the arm and the forearm, and in the next part we'll take a look at the blood supply to the hand and the wrist. We'll start off by looking at the origin of the arterial supply to the limb by looking at the vessels in the chest. So what we're looking at here is the arch of the aorta with its three branches. You've got the brachiocephalic trunk, the left common carotid and the left subclavian artery. As the subclavian arteries on either side cross the lateral edge of the first rib to enter the axilla, it becomes known as the axillary artery, which you can see here highlighted in green. We're now looking at an isolated view of the axillary artery and its branches. You can see the subclavian artery crossing the lateral border of the first rib to become the axillary artery. Also on the model here you'll notice that I've left a muscle on. This is the pectoralis minor muscle, which you can see originating on the coracoid process of the scapula. The importance of the pectoralis minor muscle is that it runs in front of the axillary artery and divides it into three parts. So the first part of the axillary artery lies proximal to the pectoralis minor, the second part lies underneath it, and the third part lies distal to it. I've removed the pectoralis minor muscle now and we'll take a look at the 6 branches of the axillary artery. So quite conveniently, the first part of the axillary artery has 1 branch, the second part has 2 branches, and the third part gives rise to 3 branches. The first branch, which you can see highlighted in green, arising from the first part of the axillary artery, is called the superior thoracic artery. The 2 branches from the second part of the axillary artery you can see highlighted in yellow. This one here is the acromiothoracic trunk, which is also known as the thoracoacromial artery, and this one here is the lateral thoracic artery. So the third part gives off 3 arteries. You've got the circumflex arteries, anterior and posterior, and you've got the subscapular artery. You can see the anterior circumflex humeral artery here in light blue running in front of the surgical neck of the humerus and anastomosing with this artery, the posterior circumflex artery. And just rotating fully round to the back, you can see the subscapular artery coming off. The subscapular artery is the largest branch of the axillary artery, and you can see 2 of its branches here, the scapular circumflex artery and the thoracodorsal artery. The axillary artery then becomes the brachial artery at the level of the lower border of the teres major muscle, which marks the lower boundary of the axilla. The brachial artery runs down the arm to end at the level of the neck of the radius, where it then divides into the radial and ulnar arteries. The brachial artery runs a superficial course just below the deep fascia, and it gives off 4 branches. You've got the profunda brachii artery, which is highlighted in yellow. This is the deep artery of the arm. You've got the nutrient artery to the humerus, and you can see this in green. And then you've got the superior and inferior ulnar collateral arteries. So you can see the superior ulnar collateral artery in light blue coming off superiorly from the brachial artery, and then the inferior ulnar collateral artery you can see here in purple coming off inferiorly. So let's take a look at the profunda brachii artery, which we saw in yellow. This artery is the largest branch and it passes posteriorly to supply the posterior compartment of the arm. As you can see here, the profunda brachii artery terminates by dividing into 2 branches. In purple, you can see the radial collateral artery, and in blue, we've got the middle collateral artery. So we've now looked at 4 collateral arteries. We've got the ulnar collateral arteries, which arise directly from the brachial artery, and you've got a superior and inferior ulnar collateral artery. And then we've taken a look at the middle collateral artery and the radial collateral artery, which arise from the profunda brachii artery. So I've just zoomed in a little bit, and if I rotate the model round so we have a posterior view of the elbow, you can see how these collateral arteries anastomose around the elbow joint to form this rich anastomotic network. Looking at the middle collateral artery in blue, you can see how it descends to anastomose with this vessel here. This is a branch of the posterior interosseous artery known as the interosseous recurrent artery. Rotating the model anteriorly, you can see how the radial collateral artery winds round anteriorly to anastomose with a recurrent branch of the radial artery. This is known as the radial recurrent artery. A recurrent artery is simply an artery that reflects back in the opposite direction of its parent artery after its origin. As we saw before, the brachial artery terminates by dividing into the radial and ulnar arteries. The radial artery begins at the neck of the radius and passes laterally along the forearm. In this part of the tutorial, we'll just look at the proximal branches of the radial and ulnar arteries. We'll look at the distal branches in the next part of this tutorial, in which we'll cover the arterial supply to the hand and the wrist. So proximally, the radial artery only has one branch, the radial recurrent artery, which we've just looked at, anastomosing with the radial collateral artery. Now the ulnar artery, which we're looking at here, passes along the medial aspect of the forearm. Proximally, it gives off the ulnar recurrent arteries. So remember, a recurrent artery is simply an artery which reflects back in the opposite direction of its parent artery. There are two ulnar recurrent arteries, anterior and posterior. In this model they're seen originating from a common trunk, but often they will arise directly from the proximal ulnar artery. So we saw the superior and inferior ulnar collateral arteries directly from the brachial artery in the first part of this tutorial, and we can see how they anastomose with the ulnar recurrent arteries. Now a little bit more distally, there's another branch given off the proximal ulnar artery. This is the common interosseous artery, which divides into an anterior branch and a posterior branch. I've zoomed in a little bit closer and you can see here the anterior interosseous artery, which descends down the forearm on the anterior aspect of the interosseous membrane. If I rotate the model posteriorly, we can see the posterior interosseous artery, and it gives off the interosseous recurrent artery, which anastomoses with the middle collateral artery, which we saw before was a branch of the profunda brachii artery. So we've taken a good look now at this rich anastomotic network that's formed around the elbow joint, and we've looked at the proximal branches of the radial and ulnar arteries that contribute to this, as well as the branches of the brachial artery. In the next tutorial we'll take a look at the distal branches of the radial and ulnar arteries and the blood supply to the hand and the wrist. Hi, this is Peter from Anatomy Zone, and in this tutorial we're going to take a look at the arterial supply to the hand and the wrist. This tutorial follows on from the one I did on the arterial supply to the arm and the forearm. What we're looking at here is an anterior view of the distal forearm and the hand. We can see the radial and ulnar arteries, which provide the arterial supply to the hand and the wrist via various different branches. We can also see two arterial arches in the palm of the hand. Superficially, in the light blue colour, is the superficial palmar arch. This arterial arch lies superficial to the flexor tendons, and it lies deep to the palmar aponeurosis, which isn't shown on this model. Deep to the flexor tendons of the hand is this arch that's highlighted in dark blue. This is the deep palmar arch, and you can see that it's sandwiched between the flexor tendons of the hand and the metacarpal bones. I've switched over now to a new model which represents the various different arteries of the hand and the wrist. Essentially, the ulnar artery supplies the medial half of the index finger as well as fingers 3, 4 and 5. The radial artery, on the other hand, supplies the thumb and the lateral half of the index finger. So if we begin by taking a look at the ulnar artery and its branches. This branch highlighted in light blue here coming off the ulnar artery is the palmar carpal branch of the ulnar artery, and this anastomoses with its counterpart palmar carpal branch of the radial artery. If I rotate the model round to a dorsal view, you can see this other artery coming off highlighted in green. This is the dorsal carpal branch of the ulnar artery. And rotating further around to a dorsal view of the hand, we can see that this anastomoses with a branch that actually comes off the radial artery. This branch coming off the radial artery is the dorsal carpal branch of the radial artery. This anastomosis forms, as you can see, an arch from the dorsal surface of the hand. Now just rotating back again to a palmar view of the hand, we can see another branch of the ulnar artery, which is the deep palmar branch. The deep palmar branch of the ulnar artery anastomoses with a branch of the radial artery to form the deep palmar arch. I've just added in the layer of muscles, and you can see how the deep palmar branch of the ulnar artery passes through the origin of the hypothenar muscles to anastomose with a branch of the radial artery to form the deep palmar arch, which is highlighted in purple. Now we've looked at the distal branches of the ulnar artery, and we can see now how the ulnar artery itself terminates. It terminates by forming this superficial palmar arch, which you can see highlighted in blue, and this palmar arch is formed by the anastomosis of the ulnar artery with a branch of the radial artery known as the superficial palmar branch, highlighted in green. Arising from the superficial palmar arch are the common palmar digital arteries, so you can see these highlighted in red. The common palmar digital arteries then divide into proper palmar digital arteries to supply the digits. And if we look medially, you can see this other branch which comes off to supply the little finger. The common palmar digital arteries anastomose with the palmar metacarpal arteries which arise from the deep palmar arch. You can see the palmar metacarpal arteries here in light blue colour arising from the deep palmar arch, highlighted in purple. Now coming on to the distal branches of the radial artery. In light blue we've already seen this branch, the palmar carpal branch of the radial artery, anastomosing with the palmar carpal branch of the ulnar artery. And then in green we've seen how the superficial palmar branch of the radial artery anastomoses with the ulnar artery to form the superficial palmar arch. So this superficial palmar branch of the radial artery arises just before the radial artery curves round to enter onto the dorsal surface of the hand. After the radial artery enters the dorsal aspect of the hand, it passes over the floor of the anatomical snuff box, and then you can see how it passes between the heads of the first dorsal interosseous muscle to re-enter the palmar aspect of the hand. On the palmar aspect of the hand, it then forms the deep palmar arch through this anastomosis with the branch of the ulnar artery called the deep palmar branch, which we looked at before. In addition, there are two other arteries which we can see here given off just as the radial artery turns onto the palmar aspect of the hand. In yellow we've got the princeps pollicis artery, which is given off as the radial artery turns into the palmar surface to form the deep palmar arch, and this artery runs along the palmar aspect of the first metacarpal, and it divides into two branches distally. The other branch is the radialis indicis artery, which is a branch that supplies the index finger, and you can see this artery in orange running along the first dorsal interosseous muscle. So we've now seen how the superficial and deep arches are formed from the branches of the radial and ulnar arteries. The superficial palmar arch is formed from the ulnar artery anastomosing with a branch of the radial artery, the superficial palmar branch of the radial artery, and we've seen how the deep palmar arch is provided mainly from the radial artery anastomosing with a deep branch of the ulnar artery, We've already taken a look at some of the branches of the deep palmar arch, but again to reiterate, just rotating the model of the hand around a bit, you can see these branches in light blue colour coming off the deep palmar arch. These are the palmar metacarpal arteries, and there are 3 of these which anastomose with the common palmar digital arteries arising from the superficial palmar arch. In addition, if I rotate the model back dorsally, you can see some perforating branches which anastomose with the dorsal metacarpal arteries. I've just switched to a different view and you can see these perforating arteries anastomosing proximally with the dorsal metacarpal arteries. Now just coming back to look at some of the dorsal branches of the radial artery. We've already seen the dorsal carpal branch which comes off the radial artery as it enters the dorsal aspect of the hand. This forms the dorsal carpal arch by anastomosing with the dorsal carpal branch of the ulnar artery, which we looked at before, and you can see it highlighted in green. In addition, you can see these arteries over here which come off the posterior interosseous artery and anastomose with the dorsal carpal arch. Now coming directly off the dorsal carpal arch are the dorsal metacarpal arteries. You can see 3 of these in yellow. So you've got dorsal metacarpal arteries 2, 3 and 4. On the medial aspect, this artery here is actually a branch which is derived from the dorsal carpal branch of the ulnar artery, and this supplies the little finger, and it's not a metacarpal artery. These 3 dorsal metacarpal arteries, as you can see, divide into 2, so they divide into dorsal digital arteries. Now just coming over laterally to the thumb side, we can see here that the radial artery gives off the first dorsal metacarpal artery, which as you can see divides into 2 to supply the adjacent sides of the thumb and index finger. That's it for the arterial supply to the hand and the wrist. We've taken a look now at the various different branches of the radial and ulnar arteries, and we've looked at how they contribute to the superficial and deep palmar arches, and how they anastomose on the dorsal surface of the hand to supply the hand and the wrist. Hi, this is Peter from Anatomy Zone, and in this tutorial we're going to be taking a look at the veins of the upper limb. The venous drainage of the upper limb consists of a superficial system which drains to a higher pressure deep venous system. The deep veins
Vamos tratar sobre a anatomia do membro superior. Lembrando que vamos ter aula de cabeça e pescoço, resumo de membro inferior, resumo de tórax e abdômen. Vai ter um resumo geral, porque vamos dividir em aulas para não ficar 1 hora, 2 horas. Lembrando para vocês, só como está disposto a microarquitetura dos ossos. Temos o tecido ósseo esponjoso, que são esses das pontas dos ossos, que também é localizado, que é muito importante.
Let's suppose that you're writing a really important email to a colleague.
Muito bem. Agora vamos ver os músculos dos membros superiores. Só lembrando que o membro superior é dividido em braço, que é o que a gente está vendo aqui, o antebraço estamos vendo um pedaço do antebraço e a mão, tá? Então essa região aqui seria o ombro, tá? Então o principal músculo da região anterior do braço é esse músculo aqui, chamado de bíceps braquial. É um músculo superficial que é o responsável pela flexão da articulação cubital ou cotovelo. Reparem que tem um pedaço de músculo nessa região aqui, que um pedaço dele encontra-se superficial, visível, mas a maior parte dele encontra-se por baixo do bíceps braquial. Esse aqui chama-se músculo coracobraquial. Então, na figura seguinte, a gente vai poder ver o coracobraquial. Então, essa figura aqui é a mesma que a gente viu anteriormente, porém sem o bíceps braquial. Aqui é o ombro, tá? Os ossos que formam o ombro. E essa aqui, ó, na figura anterior, a gente só via essa pequena parte aqui. E agora a gente já está vendo o músculo coracobraquial inteiro. E ainda esse outro músculo fica também coberto pelo bíceps braquial, cujo nome dele é simplesmente braquial. Tá? É esse aqui, ó, músculo braquial. Esse pedacinho de músculo é a inserção do deltoide, tá? O deltoide ele pega todo o ombro aqui e esse aqui é um pedaço do deltoide, pedaço final, né? Bem, atrás do braço nós temos o principal, né? Então esse aqui já é a região posterior do braço. Então nós vemos esse músculo aqui principal, que é o tríceps braquial. É esse aqui, ó. É o tríceps braquial e aqui tem o seu tendão, é o tendão tricipital. Então ele tem realmente esse formato aqui. Esses músculos aqui são do antebraço, que a gente vai ver posteriormente, e esses aqui são da cintura escapular, né? Deltoide está aqui, supraespinhal, o infraespinhal, o redondo menor e esse aqui o redondo maior. Bem, aqui nós já temos um pedaço do braço e todo o antebraço aparecendo. Então, quais os músculos principais do antebraço, região anterior? Lembrando, ó, aqui é a palma da mão. Então, nós temos esse daqui, chamado de braquiorradial, músculo braquiorradial, é esse aqui. Nós temos esse, que é o pronador redondo, e todos os outros músculos que estão nessa região são considerados como um grupo único, chamado de flexores de punho e dedos. São esses músculos aqui. Todos esses, cada um com o seu nome, porém, eles são conhecidos pelo seu conjunto, chamado flexores de punho e dedos. Na região posterior do antebraço, ó, podemos ver aqui o tendão tricipital, tá? E o tríceps braquial. Nós temos esse músculo aqui chamado ancônio. Aqui é o osso do cotovelo, né? Chamado de olecrano. Então aqui é o ancônio. Esse músculo chama-se flexor ulnar do carpo. Flexor ulnar do carpo. E repetindo o que a gente viu anteriormente, todos esses músculos que estão aqui, cada um tem o seu nome próprio, porém todos eles recebem o nome pelo seu conjunto. São chamados de músculos extensores de punho e dedos. Então reparem que todos eles terminam em grandes tendões, né, que levam até o dorso da mão. Então esses foram os principais músculos dos membros superiores. Muito bem. Agora vamos ver os músculos dos membros superiores. Só lembrando que o membro superior é dividido em braço, que é o que a gente está vendo aqui, o antebraço, estamos vendo um pedaço do antebraço, e a mão, tá? Então essa região aqui seria o ombro, tá? Então o principal músculo da região anterior do braço é esse músculo aqui, chamado de bíceps braquial. É um músculo superficial que é o responsável pela flexão da articulação cubital ou cotovelo. Reparem que tem um pedaço de músculo nessa região aqui, que um pedaço dele encontra-se superficial, visível, mas a maior parte dele encontra-se por baixo do bíceps braquial. Esse aqui chama-se músculo coracobraquial. Então, na figura seguinte, a gente vai poder ver o coracobraquial. Então, essa figura aqui é a mesma que a gente viu anteriormente, porém sem o bíceps braquial. Aqui é o ombro, tá? Os ossos que formam o ombro. E essa aqui, ó, na figura anterior, a gente só via essa pequena parte aqui. E agora a gente já está vendo o músculo coracobraquial inteiro. E ainda esse outro músculo fica também coberto pelo bíceps braquial, cujo nome dele é simplesmente braquial. Tá? É esse aqui, ó, músculo braquial. Esse pedacinho de músculo é a inserção do deltoide. Tá? O deltoide ele pega todo o ombro aqui, e esse aqui é um pedaço do deltoide. Pedaço final, né? Bem, atrás do braço nós temos o principal, né? Então isso aqui já é a região posterior do braço. Então nós vemos esse músculo aqui principal, que é o tríceps braquial. É esse aqui, ó. É o tríceps braquial, e aqui tem o seu tendão. É o tendão tricipital. Então ele tem realmente esse formato aqui. Esses músculos aqui são do antebraço, que a gente vai ver posteriormente, e esses aqui são da cintura escapular, né? Deltoide está aqui, supraespinhal, o infraespinhal, o redondo menor, e esse aqui o redondo maior. Bem, aqui nós já temos um pedaço do braço e todo o antebraço aparecendo. Então, quais os músculos principais do antebraço, região anterior? Lembrando, ó, aqui é a palma da mão. Então, nós temos esse daqui, chamado de braquiorradial, músculo braquiorradial, é esse aqui. Nós temos esse, que é o pronador redondo, e todos os outros músculos que estão nessa região são considerados como um grupo único, chamado de flexores de punho e dedos. São esses músculos aqui. Todos esses, cada um com o seu nome, porém, eles são conhecidos pelo seu conjunto, chamado flexores de punho e dedos. Na região posterior do antebraço, ó, podemos ver aqui o tendão tricipital, tá? E o tríceps braquial. Nós temos esse músculo aqui chamado ancônio. Aqui é o osso do cotovelo, né? Chamado de olécrano. Então aqui é o ancônio. Esse músculo chama-se flexor ulnar do carpo, flexor ulnar do carpo. E repetindo o que a gente viu anteriormente, todos esses músculos que estão aqui Cada um tem o seu nome próprio, porém todos eles recebem o nome pelo seu conjunto. São chamados de músculos extensores de punho e dedos. Então reparem que todos eles terminam em grandes tendões, né, que levam até o dorso da mão. Então esses foram os principais músculos dos membros superiores.
Hello everyone, this is Juan from CanHub. Welcome to another tutorial. This time I'm going to be talking about the muscles of the upper arm and the shoulder blade. Like you see here on this image, we have the humerus here, which is the main bony framework of the upper arm. And on your left side, you have here the triangular shaped bone known as the scapula, or also known as the shoulder blade. Now, we are going to be discussing the different muscles that you can find within the humerus and also attached somehow to the scapula. Now, as you know, you may split muscles into several groups based on different criteria like innervation, functions, or even embryology. But on this tutorial specifically, we will be looking at these muscles, or the muscles that have their attachment points or lay on, or their bellies are laying on these two bones, the humerus and the scapula. Now let's look at the first topic here on our tutorial, the muscles of the upper arm, which I can tell you that can be also split into two groups. The first one, the ventral group, which includes the biceps brachii and also the brachialis muscle. Also, you can find another group known as the dorsal group, which includes the anconeus and also the triceps brachii. Now let's start with the very first group here, the ventral group, and with the first muscle of this list, which you see here highlighted in green. This is known as the biceps brachii. Now the biceps brachii has, like the name indicates, is divided into two heads. Now the short head, as you can see here, and the long head of the biceps brachii. Now, as you see here on these images, where we highlighted the heads in green as well, you notice that the long head is originating right here from the supraglenoid tubercle of the scapula. And on the short head, you see that the origin point is right here on the coracoid process of the scapula. Now, these two heads will merge then to insert right here on the radial tuberosity of the radius, and also, as you can see, this portion right here, this is on the antebrachial fascia. Now let's move on to the second one on our list, this muscle here that you see highlighted on both of these images in green. Now on the left side on this image, it's found on its relaxed position, while on the right side is where you see it contracted. Now can you guess what this muscle is? Well, it is indeed the brachialis muscle. Now, the brachialis originates right here on this point that you can see here from the distal half of the anterior portion of the humerus and also the medial and lateral intermuscular septum. Now, it goes all the way to insert right at this point here on the ulnar tuberosity. Now, taking a second look here on the list of the muscles of the upper arm to say that we just concluded the ventral group and going to move on to the dorsal group. To the first muscle on our list, here the anconeus muscle. You also see two images here where this muscle is highlighted and found on its contracted version and also relaxed version. Now, this muscle originates from the lateral epicondyle of the humerus, as you can see right here, and it goes all the way to insert on the olecranon of the ulna, right about here. Now, the second muscle on the dorsal group is this muscle here that defines the dorsal portion of your upper arm. So a lot of people go to the gym to work on this muscle, and as you probably guessed, this is the triceps brachii. Now, as the name indicates, and as we've seen on the biceps brachii, the triceps brachii has 3 heads. Now, the first one is seen here, highlighted in green. This is known as the long head, and the long head originates right about here on the infraglenoid tubercle of the scapula. Now, a little bit more medially, you will find then the medial head, which is also highlighted here in green, and you can see that this head is originating from the posterior surface of the humerus, a little bit distal from the radial groove. Now, it also inserts on the intermuscular septum, more specifically on the medial portion of the intermuscular septum. Now, the third head is seen here and, of course, found more laterally, and we call it then the lateral head of the triceps brachii, and it is originating right about here on the posterior surface of the humerus as well, but this time proximal to the radial groove. This head is also attaching to or originating from the lateral intermuscular septum. Now, the 3 heads are merging, as you can see on either of these 3 images. They will merge into this flat, relatively flat tendon, and then insert on this portion right here on your elbow on the
a clavícula, atrás a escápula, aqui a espinha da escápula, que é isso daqui, o acrômio é bem aqui em cima, o acrômio, e o processo coracoide é embaixo do acrômio aqui, aí o úmero tem a cabeça do úmero, que é essa parte aqui, o epicôndilo medial, que é isso daqui, essa parte, o epicôndilo lateral, o rádio, que é isso daqui, o rádio, a cabeça do rádio, que é aqui, o carimbo, lembra? O processo estiloide do rádio é isso daqui, ó, a pontinha também, aí a una, do lado do rádio, atrás, bem atrás, aqui na una, o olécrano, aqui, ó, o olécrano, embaixo nela tem o processo estiloide também, que é bem essa pontinha, os ossos carpais, que é aqui, metacarpais, e as falanges proximal, médio e distal.
Ok!
Cirurgia do plexo braquial. Módulo de anatomia. O cíngulo do membro superior é formado pela escápula e clavícula. A clavícula é um osso em forma de S, que tem 2 extremidades. A external se articula com o externo através da articulação externo-clavicular. E a extremidade lateral, que se articula com a escápula através da extremidade acromioclavicular. A face inferior da clavícula apresenta o sulco do músculo subclávio e a impressão do ligamento costoclavicular e o tubérculo conoide. A escápula é um osso em forma de lâmina, formando uma verdadeira articulação escápulo-torácica. Apresenta a margem superior, ângulo superior, margem medial, ângulo inferior e a margem lateral. Estão também presentes o colo, a cavidade glenoide, onde articula-se com o úmero, o tubérculo supraglenoide e o tubérculo infraglenoide. Na face posterior encontra-se a espinha da escápula, que, continuando-se como acrômio e o processo coracoide, observa-se a incisura supraescapular. A espinha da escápula divide a face posterior em dois compartimentos, a fossa supraespinhosa e a fossa infraespinhosa. O úmero tem a sua extremidade com a cabeça anatômica e colo cirúrgico. A cabeça articula-se com a cavidade glenoide através da cápsula articular com seus ligamentos glenohumerais. Na cabeça encontram-se dois tubérculos, um maior, um menor e o sulco intertubercular. No sulco intertubercular, encontramos o tendão da cabeça longa do bíceps com o ligamento transverso. O tendão da cabeça longa do bíceps insere-se no tubérculo supraglenoidal e o da cabeça curta no processo coracoide. O músculo peitoral menor e o coracobraquial têm suas inserções nesse processo ósseo que é o processo coracoide. O músculo coracobraquial tem sua origem na face anterolateral do úmero. Na face lateral do úmero encontra-se a rugosidade do deltoídeo, onde está a inserção do músculo deltoide. Na extremidade distal do úmero, observamos a superfície articular com o rádio e a ulna. A ulna articula-se com a tróclea e o rádio com o capítulo. Acima, na extremidade medial do úmero, está o epicôndilo medial com a crista supracondilar medial e na extremidade lateral, com o epicôndilo lateral e a crista supracondilar lateral. Na face anterior da extremidade do úmero, observamos a fossa do processo coronoide. Na face posterior da extremidade, observamos a fossa do olécrano. O rádio e a ulna articulam-se na extremidade proximal, na cabeça da ulna e na incisura radial, onde ele se mantém unido através do ligamento anular. A tuberosidade do rádio, na face anteromedial superior, é onde se insere o tendão do bíceps e na tuberosidade ulnar, o tendão braquial. A membrana interóssea mantém fortemente unidos esses dois ossos. Na extremidade distal do rádio, observamos a superfície articular e o processo estiloide. Na extremidade distal da ulna, a superfície articular da cabeça da ulna e o processo estiloide da ulna. Esses dois ossos apresentam articulação rádio-ulnar distal. O carpo com seus ossos articulam-se com a extremidade distal do rádio. O flexor ulnar do carpo insere-se nos ossos do carpo e na base do quinto metacarpo. O flexor radial do carpo na base do segundo e terceiro metacarpo. O flexor profundo dos dedos insere-se na base da falange distal e o flexor superficial na base da falange média. O extensor ulnar do carpo insere-se na base do quinto metacarpo e o extensor radial na base do segundo e terceiro metacarpo. Cirurgia do plexo braquial. Módulo de anatomia. O símbolo do membro superior é formado pela escápula e clavícula. A clavícula é um osso em forma de S, que tem duas extremidades. A external se articula com o externo através da articulação externo-clavicular. E a extremidade lateral, que se articula com a escápula através da extremidade acromioclavicular. A face inferior da clavícula apresenta o sulco do músculo subclávio e a impressão do ligamento costoclavicular e o tubérculo conoide. A escápula é um osso em forma de lâmina, formando uma verdadeira articulação escapulotorácica. Apresenta a margem superior, ângulo superior, margem medial, ângulo inferior e a margem lateral. Estão também presentes o colo, a cavidade glenoide, onde articula-se com o úmero, o tubérculo supraglenoide e o tubérculo infraglenoide. Na face posterior encontra-se a espinha da escápula, que, continuando-se como acrômio e o processo coracoide, observa-se a incisura supraescapular. A espinha da escápula divide a face posterior em dois compartimentos, a fossa supraespinhosa e a fossa infraespinhosa. O úmero tem a sua extremidade com a cabeça anatômica e colo cirúrgico. A cabeça articula-se com a cavidade glenoide através da cápsula articular com seus ligamentos glenohumerais. Na cabeça encontram-se dois tubérculos, um maior, um menor e o sulco intertubercular. No sulco intertubercular, encontramos o tendão da cabeça longa do bíceps com o ligamento transverso. O tendão da cabeça longa do bíceps insere-se no tubérculo supraglenoidal e o da cabeça curta no processo coracoide. O músculo peitoral menor e o coracobraquial têm suas inserções nesse processo ósseo que é o processo coracoide. O músculo coracobraquial tem sua origem na face anterolateral do úmero. Na face lateral do úmero encontra-se a rugosidade do deltoídeo, onde está a inserção do músculo deltoide. Na extremidade distal do úmero, observamos a superfície articular com o rádio e a ulna. A ulna articula-se com a tróclea e o rádio com o capítulo. Acima, na extremidade medial do úmero, está o epicôndilo medial com a crista supracondilar medial e na extremidade lateral, com o epicôndilo lateral e a crista supracondilar lateral. Na face anterior da extremidade do úmero, observamos a fossa do processo coronoide. Na face posterior da extremidade, observamos a fossa do olécrano. O rádio e a ulna articulam-se na extremidade proximal, na cabeça da ulna e na incisura radial, onde ele se mantém unido através do ligamento anular. A tuberosidade do rádio, na face anteromedial superior, é onde se insere o tendão do bíceps e na tuberosidade ulnar, o tendão braquial. A membrana interóssea mantém fortemente unidos esses dois ossos. Na extremidade distal do rádio, observamos a superfície articular e o processo estiloide. Na extremidade distal da ulna, a superfície articular da cabeça da ulna e o processo estiloide da ulna. Esses dois ossos apresentam articulação rádio-ulnar distal. O carpo com seus ossos articulam-se com a extremidade distal do rádio. O flexor ulnar do carpo insere-se nos ossos do carpo e na base do quinto metacarpo. O flexor radial do carpo na base do segundo e terceiro metacarpo. O flexor profundo dos dedos insere-se na base da falange distal e o flexor superficial na base da falange média. O extensor ulnar do carpo insere-se na base do quinto metacarpo e o extensor radial na base do segundo e terceiro metacarpo.
Bonjour! Se você caiu de paraquedas no mundo dos games e agora precisa...
O vídeo de hoje vai mostrar os ossos relacionados com o membro superior. Então aqui nós temos a clavícula, a escápula, que formam a cintura escapular, o húmero, osso do braço, o rádio e a ulna, ossos do antebraço e a nossa mão. Vamos começar falando sobre os acidentes anatômicos relacionados com a clavícula. Bem, a clavícula ela tem duas extremidades. Uma extremidade que é chamada de acromial e outra extremidade que é chamada de external. Toda essa região é chamada de corpo da clavícula. E numa visão inferior, o que é que nós podemos observar? Um tubérculo que é chamado tubérculo conoide. Toda essa área aqui é chamada de impressão para o ligamento costoclavicular. Nessa região, nós temos a linha trapezoide. E em uma clavícula natural, nós vamos ter alguns forames, que são chamados de forames nutrícios. Além disso, a gente ainda tem nessa região o sulco para o músculo subclávio. Escápula. A escápula ela é classificada como um osso plano, chato ou laminar, e você pode observar que ela tem uma face posterior e uma face anterior. Nessa face anterior da escápula, toda essa região é chamada de fossa subescapular. Nós podemos observar o processo coracoide, a incisura da escápula, a cavidade glenoide, com o tubérculo supraglenoidal e o tubérculo infraglenoidal, o acrômio, a incisura espinoglenoidal, a fossa infraespinoglenoidal, o ângulo lateral. Então, essa margem, ela é a margem lateral. E essa face aqui, ela é chamada de face costal. O colo da escápula se situa nessa região, muito perto da cavidade glenoide. O húmero. O húmero é classificado como osso longo, e todo osso longo tem duas extremidades, chamadas epífice, extremidade proximal e extremidade distal, e um corpo chamado de ápice. Na extremidade proximal, o que é que nós podemos observar? Essa área é chamada cabeça do húmero. Nós temos dois tubérculos, tubérculo maior, tubérculo menor. Toda essa região aqui é chamada de colo anatômico do húmero. E entre os tubérculos, nós temos o sulco intertubercular. Descendo, nós vamos ter a crista do tubérculo maior e a crista do tubérculo menor. E nessa região temos a tuberosidade deltoide, aonde o músculo deltoide se insere. Toda essa área de corpo, ela vai até a extremidade distal, onde nós vamos ter a margem lateral e a margem medial, com a crista supraepicondilar lateral e crista supraepicondilar medial, onde teremos também o epicôndilo lateral, o epicôndilo medial, a fossa coronoide, a fossa radial. Toda essa área aqui é a face anteromedial. E nós temos aqui o capítulo e a acrópole. Numa visão posterior, continuamos na extremidade proximal, observando o colo anatômico, todo o corpo, e nessa região a gente tem um sulco, que é chamado de sulco para o nervo radial. Então, esse sulco, ele é chamado de sulco para o nervo radial. Toda essa face é a face posterior, onde nós temos outra fossa, denominada fossa do olecrano, e continuamos visualizando a tróclea. Além disso, nós podemos observar nessa região de epicôndilo medial um sulco, que é denominado sulco para o nervo lunar. nós conseguimos visualizar a incisura troclear, a incisura radial, é aqui que a cabeça do rádio ela encosta. Nós temos ainda a tuberosidade da una. Nós temos o processo coronoide, que é toda essa área aqui. Nós temos aqui um forame, que é chamado de forame nutrício. A margem interóssea. Toda essa área de corpo da una, culminando nessa região aqui, com a extremidade distal, tendo o processo estiloide da una, e essa parte é a circunferência articular, com a cabeça da una. Além disso, nós podemos ainda citar o olécrano, que é essa região aqui superior, perto da incisura troclear, do processo coronoide e da tuberosidade da una. E essa região, assim vai se acoplar na fossa do olécrano. Então, dessa forma, nós vamos ter os nossos movimentos. Vamos agora conversar sobre a mão. A mão, ela possui ossos, que são ossos do tipo curto e ossos longos. Os ossos curtos, eles pertencem ao carpo. Então, nós temos uma fileira que é chamada de proximal, uma fileira que é chamada de distal, os metacarpos e as falanges. Vamos começar pela fileira proximal do carpo, lembrando sempre que nós temos que colocar a mão na posição anatômica. Então, a mão ela vai estar virada, espalmada para frente. Dessa forma, este osso é chamado de escafoide, esse é chamado de semilunar, esse é chamado de piramidal e esse aqui é chamado de piciforme. Na fileira distal, nós temos o trapézio, o trapezoide, o capitato, o amato e o âmulo do amato. Com relação ao metacarpo, nós vamos ter primeiro, segundo, terceiro, quarto e quinto metacarpo, ou metacárpico, como queiram falar. Todo metacarpo vai ter uma base, um corpo e uma cabeça. Uma base, um corpo e uma cabeça. Uma base, um corpo, uma cabeça. Uma base, um corpo, uma cabeça. Uma base, um corpo e uma cabeça. Classificado como ossos longos. Reparem no detalhe agora das falanges. As falanges, elas são, na maioria, em número de 3, exceto no polegar. No polegar, nós só temos a falange proximal e a falange distal. Cada falange vai ter também uma base, um corpo e uma cabeça. Uma base, um corpo e uma cabeça. Então, esta falange é chamada de falange proximal e esta é chamada de falange distal. Essa região aqui é chamada de tuberosidade da falange distal. Desse outro dedo, falange proximal, falange proximal, falange proximal, falange proximal. Falange média, também com base, corpo e cabeça. E falanges distais, sendo que na ponta nós chamamos de tuberosidade da falange distal. Bem, dessa forma, contemplamos no nosso estudo os acidentes anatômicos relacionados com o membro superior. Até o próximo vídeo, onde nós vamos conversar sobre os acidentes anatômicos do membro inferior. neste vídeo, vamos conversar um pouco sobre os ossos do membro inferior. Como estão disponíveis aqui na bancada, podemos observar o osso do quadril, o fêmur, a patela, a tíbia, a fíbula e o pé. Lembre-se sempre que nas minhas aulas de anatomia, eu sempre faço uma brincadeira dizendo que quem sabe mão, sabe pé. E agora eu vou mostrar para vocês como é a mais simples verdade. Vamos começar enfocando os acidentes anatômicos do pé. Bem, lembre-se que a posição anatômica, o pé ele está unido com a ponta dos dedos voltada para frente. Esse pé é o pé direito. Nós temos o tarso, nós vamos ter o metatarso e nós vamos ter as falanges. O tarso é composto por ossos que são classificados com relação à forma como ossos do tipo curto, os metatarsos, ossos longos, e as falanges também ossos classificados como longos. Vamos identificar os ossos da fileira proximal e da fileira distal do tarso. Esse osso aqui é o talos. E nós podemos observar que essa região é chamada de talos e aqui a cabeça do talos. Esse osso mais inferior e posterior é chamado de calcâneo. Além disso, nós vamos ter na fileira proximal um outro osso que é chamado de navicular. Então, talos, calcâneo e navicular fazem parte da fileira proximal do pé, do tarso. E a fileira distal vai ser composta pelos cuneiformes, que recebe a seguinte denominação: cuneiforme medial, cuneiforme intermédio, cuneiforme lateral e esse último osso aqui, que é chamado de cuboide. Depois das fileiras, nós entramos nos metatarsos. Então, nós temos primeiro, segundo, terceiro, quarto e quinto metatarso, ou metatarso. E lembre-se, cada metatarso tem uma base, um corpo e uma cabeça. 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 Essa região aqui é chamada de tuberosidade do quinto metatarso. Falanges. Na mão, no polegar, foi dito que nós temos apenas duas falanges, uma proximal e uma distal. No pé também. O nome desse dedo recebe a denominação de hálux. O hálux tem uma falange proximal, com base, corpo e cabeça, uma falange distal, também com base, corpo e cabeça, sendo que essa região também é denominada tuberosidade da falange distal. As outras falanges, elas vão ser divididas em três, então nós temos falange proximal, falange média e falange distal, proximal, média e distal, proximal, média e distal, proximal, média e distal. Todas essas extremidades são as tuberosidades da falange distal e cada falange também tem uma base, um corpo e uma cabeça. Uma base, um corpo e uma cabeça. Uma base, um corpo e uma cabeça. Numa visão diferente da posição anatômica, ou seja, numa vista plantar, eu ainda posso mostrar para vocês algumas peculiaridades. Por exemplo, essa região aqui é chamada processo medial da tuberosidade do calcâneo. Nós temos todo esse osso chamado calcâneo e essa área aqui já é uma área onde a gente denomina sustentáculo do talos. Por quê? Porque se você observar, o calcâneo está muito unido com o talos, então é nessa região que existe esse sustentáculo. Nessa área aqui, nós temos a cabeça do talos. O cuboide também vai ter a sua tuberosidade. Então, nessa região, nós temos a tuberosidade do cuboide. Nós podemos ainda verificar a tuberosidade do navicular, os cuneiformes, que já foram citados, cuneiforme medial, cuneiforme intermédio, cuneiforme lateral, e nós temos aqui nesse osso cuboide, um sulco que é chamado sulco do tendão lumbar, um músculo fibular longo. Lembre-se que essa tuberosidade, que eu já havia dito anteriormente, é chamada de tuberosidade do quinto metatarso. E aqui no primeiro dedo, nós também vamos ter uma tuberosidade, que é a tuberosidade do primeiro metatarso. Esses ossinhos aqui que vocês estão vendo são chamados de ossos sesamoides. Vocês bem lembram que o osso sesamoide é um osso que pode se desenvolver dentro de uma cápsula de um tendão. Assim, nós terminamos os acidentes anatômicos relacionados com o nosso pé. Agora nós vamos conversar um pouco sobre os dois outros ossos longos que fazem parte da formação da perna. Então, quais seriam esses ossos? Nós temos poder observar a fossa do maléolo lateral e a face articular do maléolo lateral. Numa outra visão, nós podemos observar que a gente tem um sulco chamado sulco maleolar e essa área é o maléolo lateral. Agora falaremos um pouco sobre a tíbia. A tíbia também é um osso longo e nessa porção anterior, nessa vista anterior, podemos visualizar a extremidade proximal e a extremidade distal. Prestem atenção porque a tíbia, ela tem algumas áreas que são bastante importantes. E nós temos realmente acidentes anatômicos de um número significante aqui nesse osso. Essa área aqui é chamada tuberosidade da tíbia. Eu sempre brinco com meus alunos e digo, é exatamente onde a gente bate quando a gente não quer bater. É nesse ossinho aqui. O nome desse ossinho, o nome dessa região, é chamada tuberosidade da tíbia. Essa tíbia é uma tíbia esquerda. Então, toda essa região aqui é medial. Então, nessa área, nós vamos ter o côndilo medial. Nessa área, nós vamos ter o côndilo lateral. Nessa visualização superior, o que eu consigo visualizar? Consigo ver uma área intercondilar anterior e uma área músculo